Welcome back to the channel, Rare Coins History, fellow coin lovers, history buffs, and treasure hunters. You're in for a treat today, because we're about to dive deep into the story of one of the most intriguing and surprisingly valuable coins in American numismatic history, the 1965 Washington quarter. At first glance, it might seem like just another ordinary piece of pocket change. You may have even handled one without thinking twice. But by the end of this video, you'll see this coin in a whole new light, and understand how a seemingly common quarter could end up being worth a small fortune. So, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join me as we unravel the mystery, the history, and the hidden value of the United States 1965 Washington quarter. Let's begin by taking a step back in time, to the year 1965. America was in the middle of a transformative decade. The Vietnam War was escalating, civil rights movements were sweeping across the nation, and cultural revolutions were redefining American life. But amid all this change, something quietly significant was happening in the world of U.S. currency. You see, prior to 1965, quarters were made of 90% silver and 10% copper. These silver quarters had real intrinsic value, not just as currency, but as metal. However, the price of silver began to climb rapidly during the early 1960s, and people started hoarding silver coins. As a result, the U.S. Treasury saw a looming shortage of coins and made a big decision: they would remove silver from most circulating coins, and so, starting in 1965, the U.S. Mint introduced the new clad composition for the quarter, comprising copper sandwiched between two layers of cupronickel. This change was meant to keep coin production affordable and reduce hoarding. The Washington quarter, which had featured the first president's profile since 1932, became the first quarter to bear this new composition, forever marking 1965 as a turning point in American coinage history. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting. Although the Mint officially stopped producing 90% silver quarters after 1964, transitional errors can and do happen. Transitional error coins are coins struck using older or unintended materials due to mishaps during the transition of metal compositions. And when it comes to the 1965 Washington quarter, some of these mistakes are believed to have slipped through the cracks. A few rare 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. That means they were minted with the old silver composition, even though they were dated 1965. Imagine that. Mint employees may not have realized that a silver blank made it into the presses alongside the new clad ones, creating a coin that technically should not exist. But how can you tell if you have one of these special quarters? First, weight is key. A standard 1965 clad quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. However, a silver quarter from 1964 or one of these rare transitional errors will weigh closer to 6.25 grams. That's a significant difference, especially to trained collectors who use digital scales to spot rarities. Second, the edge of the coin provides a helpful clue. Clad quarters show a copper stripe along the edge, due to their layered metal composition. Silver quarters, by contrast, have a solid silver edge with no copper showing. So if you find a 1965 quarter that looks unusually shiny or lacks the copper stripe, it might be worth a second look. Let's talk about mint marks for a moment. In 1965, the U.S. Mint actually made a unique decision, not to include any mint marks on coins. That's right, quarters minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all came without mint marks that year. The reason? The Mint was attempting to discourage coin collecting during the coin shortage. So if you find a 1965 quarter with a mint mark like D or S, it may not be genuine, or, in a very rare hypothetical case, it could represent a minting anomaly. These kinds of oddities make collectors pay attention, but even among quarters with no mint mark, the true gems are those few that were mistakenly struck in silver. These are the coins that send collectors racing to auctions and bring huge attention when they're confirmed to be genuine. Let's pause for a second and think about this. How many of us have 1965 quarters sitting in a jar somewhere, completely unaware of their potential? Most people see a 1965 quarter and assume it's worth 25 cents, nothing more. But the truth is, your average clad 1965 quarter in circulated condition holds minimal collectible value. It's the rare ones, the error coins, the uncirculated examples, and especially the silver transitional errors that break the mold and enter the realm of serious coin treasure. Now here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Over the years, collectors and numismatists have uncovered a small number of these rare 1965 silver quarters. Authentication, of course, is key, and that's where professional coin grading services come in. Organizations like PCGS and NGC carefully evaluate coins for authenticity, grade, and rarity. When a true 1965 silver quarter is verified, its value skyrockets. Imagine you're rummaging through your grandfather's old coin collection, or maybe just sorting through some change in your car's cup holder, and you come across a 1965 quarter that feels a little heavier. The edge looks different. You pull out a small scale, or even better, bring it to a coin dealer, and they tell you the unbelievable news: it's not just any quarter. It's a rare minting error, struck on a 90% silver planchet. It's a piece of history that shouldn't exist, and it could be worth more than most people make in a year. Collectors go wild for transitional errors. They're not just coins, they're accidental relics of US mint history, a moment frozen in time when a machine did something it wasn't supposed to do, and a little piece of silver slipped past unnoticed. These coins are like finding a typo in a famous book, except the typo is made of silver and could change your life. Over time, these coins have only grown in value. The market for rare coins is alive and thriving, with collectors constantly searching for that next hidden gem. If you're serious about coins, or even just curious, it's worth checking your old pocket change, your coin jars, or those rolls of quarters from the bank. The rare ones are out there, and someone is going to find them. Now, the moment you've been waiting for. If you're lucky enough to find one of these legendary 1965 Washington quarters struck on a silver planchet, authenticated, verified, and in great condition, it could fetch an absolutely jaw-dropping amount at auction. We're not talking a few $100s. Not even a few thousand. That a verified 1965 Washington quarter struck in silver has been reported to sell for as much as $85,000. Yes, you heard that right, $85,000 for a single quarter that most people would never look at twice, and that's the magic of coin collecting. It's not just about the metal or the money, it's about history, rarity, and the thrill of the hunt. So next time you're handed change, don't just toss it aside. Look closely. Weigh it. Inspect it. Because you never know when you might be holding something worth more than gold. Today, we're taking a closer look at a coin that may seem ordinary at first glance but could turn out to be a hidden treasure, the 1966 United States Washington quarter. Yes, that quarter you might have seen tossed into a fountain, stuck in a couch cushion, or rattling around in your old coin jar could actually be worth far more than you'd expect. You might be wondering, how could a coin from 1966, so recent in the grand scheme of American history, hold any significant value? Well, the answer lies in its history, its rarity, and a few fascinating secrets known only to seasoned collectors. So stay with me all the way to the end, because what I'm about to share might just change how you look at your everyday change forever. Let's rewind the clock to the mid-1960s. The United States was in the middle of massive cultural and political change. The civil rights movement was in full swing, the Vietnam War was intensifying, and America was racing to put a man on the moon. But while the headlines were focused on protests, space, and politics, a quieter revolution was taking place in the world of American coinage. Prior to 1965, quarters were minted using 90% silver. These coins had both face value and metal value, making them highly desirable not just as currency but also for their silver content. But by the early 60s, silver prices were climbing fast, and people started hoarding these coins. It didn't take long before the US Mint realized it had a serious problem. Coins were disappearing from circulation. In response, 1965 marked a major shift. The Mint eliminated silver from most circulating coins, including the Washington quarter. In its place, they introduced a new metal composition known as clad, which consisted of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of cupronickel. This new material was less valuable and more practical for everyday use. It looked similar to silver but had none of the same intrinsic value. By 1966, the transition to clad coinage was fully in motion. But with change always comes growing pains, and this is where things start to get exciting. Although the mint intended for all 1966 quarters to be struck in the new clad composition, history has a funny way of letting a few surprises slip through the cracks. Now, let's talk about the coin itself. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932, in honor of the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. It features a classic portrait of Washington on the obverse, sculpted by John Flanagan, and the iconic eagle on the reverse, wings spread wide, clutching arrows and olive branches. These elements remained consistent for decades, but the 1966 quarter represents a unique era. It's a coin from a time of transition, not just politically and socially, but materially and mint-wise. One of the most intriguing facts about the 1966 quarter is the absence of a mint mark. In an effort to discourage coin hoarding and stabilize coin circulation, the U.S. Mint decided to omit mint marks from coins produced in 1965, 1966, and 1967. That means whether your 1966 quarter came from Philadelphia, Denver, or even San Francisco, there's no way to tell, at least not from the coin itself. It was a bold move by the mint, and it makes coins from these years especially fascinating for collectors, but here's where things take a thrilling turn. Despite the official change in composition, mistakes do happen at the mint. And in the case of 1966, rumors and reports have circulated for years that a few quarters were mistakenly struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. These are known as transitional errors, coins that were struck using the wrong metal due to leftover blanks being mixed in during production. Transitional error coins are among the most coveted in the numismatic world because they represent anomalies, mishaps that turn ordinary coins into historical oddities. Imagine holding a 1966 quarter that feels just a bit heavier than the rest. You look at the edge, and instead of seeing the familiar copper-colored stripe that's visible on all clad coins, you see a clean, solid silver edge. That's a major red flag, in the best possible way. It could mean that your coin was struck in silver, a mistake that shouldn't have happened, but somehow did. Weight is another clue. A regular clad 1966 quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. But a 90% silver quarter from 1964 weighs approximately 6.25 grams. That small difference might seem trivial, but to an experienced collector, it's everything. All it takes is a precise scale and a bit of curiosity to potentially uncover a rare treasure hiding in plain sight. Now let's talk about condition, because rarity isn't just about what the coin is made of. It's also about how well it has survived the test of time. Most 1966 quarters in circulation have been heavily used. They're scratched, worn, and dented from decades of handling. But if you come across a 1966 quarter in uncirculated or mint state condition, especially one with deep luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear, it becomes an entirely different story. Coins in pristine condition are graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC and can receive grades from MS60 all the way up to the elusive MS67 or MS68. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin, especially when it's already considered rare, and we haven't even touched on the possibility of die errors and strike varieties. These include things like double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other minting errors that can skyrocket a coin's value. For the 1966 quarter, while official mint records suggest standardization, the coin community knows that errors and anomalies have occurred, and they're always on the hunt for them. The best part? These coins are still out there. In jars, drawers, old purses, and forgotten change collections. Most people overlook them, assuming all post-1964 quarters are essentially worthless beyond their face value. But numismatists know better. They know that with the right eye and the right tools, a coin from 1966 can go from ordinary to extraordinary in the blink of an eye. Collectors are constantly scouring eBay, coin shows, estate sales, and auctions in search of the next big discovery. There's something magical about finding that one-in-a-million coin, the kind of piece that changes a collection forever. And the 1966 Washington quarter, with its unique history, potential minting errors, and hidden silver surprises, is a sleeper coin that deserves far more attention than it gets. So what does this all mean for you? It means that every quarter you come across is an opportunity. It means that buried in the everyday can be something remarkable. It means that your curiosity and attention to detail could literally pay off, and now, the moment you've been waiting for, the part that blows people's minds when they hear it for the first time. If you're lucky enough to discover a 1966 Washington quarter struck in silver, in excellent condition, verified by professional grading, and possibly even with a rare minting anomaly, it could be valued at an absolutely incredible sum. In fact, one such rare example has reportedly sold for as much as $80,000. That's right. $80,000 for a quarter. Today's story takes us deep into the heart of American currency to uncover the mystery, rarity, and hidden value of the 1967 Washington quarter. Now, before you toss that old quarter into a vending machine, or let it disappear at the bottom of your coin jar, stop and take a closer look. That worn piece of metal might be far more valuable than it seems. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why, and how a 1967 quarter, that most people overlook every single day, could be one of the most exciting hidden treasures in modern American coinage. Let's start with a bit of context. The year was 1967. America was on fire with change. The Vietnam War was raging. Protests were growing. Music was evolving. Civil rights movements were pushing forward. The world was shifting dramatically, and so was the money in people's hands. Only a couple of years earlier, the U.S. Mint had made a major decision. Due to rising silver prices, quarters, dimes, and half-dollars were being hoarded by the public. Why? Because those coins contained real silver, 90% of it, in fact, and they were worth more melted down than they were in face value. As a result, the mint faced a massive coin shortage. So in 1965, the government stopped producing silver quarters and moved to a new composition, a clad coin made with a copper core and a cupronickel outer layer. The idea was simple: create a coin that looked similar to silver, but cost far less to make. But what seemed like a clean transition in the history books wasn't so smooth in real life. 1967 marks the third year of this new clad coin era. But just because silver was supposed to be gone from quarters doesn't mean every single one followed the rules. Now here's where things get fascinating. You see, 1967 quarters were produced during a very specific 3-year period when the U.S. Mint made a bold and unusual decision. They removed all mint marks. That means coins struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or even San Francisco would appear exactly the same: no little d, no s, nothing. Just the date and the design. This was part of a government effort to prevent coin hoarding and discourage collectors from targeting specific mints during a time of transition. But any time something changes at the mint, something strange has the potential to slip through. And for collectors, the 1967 Washington quarter represents more than just a post-silver coin, it represents a potential jackpot. Let's talk about the design first. The obverse features the classic profile of George Washington, sculpted by John Flanagan. It's bold, timeless, and familiar. The reverse shows the heraldic eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows and framed by olive branches. It's patriotic, powerful, and has remained relatively unchanged for decades. But while the design may look simple, the real magic lies beneath the surface, because not all 1967 quarters are created equal. Although official records tell us that all quarters from 1967 were made of copper nickel clad, there have been rumors and reports of error coins struck on leftover silver blanks from 1964. These kinds of minting mistakes, known as transitional errors, are like hitting the lottery in the coin collecting world. Imagine a silver planchet, intended for quarters from years before, accidentally making its way into the presses in 1967. The result? A 1967 quarter that looks just like the others, but with a completely different composition, 90% silver. To the naked eye, it may go unnoticed. But to a trained collector, that one detail changes everything. So how can you tell if you found one of these hidden treasures? Start by looking at the edge of the coin. A clad quarter will clearly show a copper-colored strip along the edge. This is the copper core peeking through. But a silver quarter? Its edge is solid in color, with no copper visible at all. If your 1967 quarter has a solid edge with no sign of copper, that's your first clue. Next, you'll want to check the weight. A standard 1967 clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. But if your quarter comes in closer to 6.25 grams, it may very well be struck on a silver planchet, meaning you're holding something that was never supposed to exist. And there's more. Aside from transitional silver errors, some 1967 quarters are prized for strike quality and condition. The U.S. Mint released a special set of coins that year known as Special Mint Sets, or SMS coins. These weren't standard proofs, but they had higher quality finishes than regular circulation coins. A 1967 quarter from a special mint set, especially one graded at a high mint state level like MS-67 or MS-68, can fetch a surprising amount on the collector's market, and that's not even mentioning the error coins, off-center strikes, double dies, clipped planchets, or coins with design doubling. These types of minting anomalies are extremely sought after, and when they appear on a coin from a year like 1967, which already carries a degree of historical intrigue, their value multiplies significantly. You may be thinking, okay, but how rare are these coins really? That's the exciting part. They're rare enough to be worth hunting for, but not so rare that finding one is impossible. People have found them. They've come from estate collections, old bank rolls, forgotten drawers, and even pocket change, and let's not forget about coin grading. Once you think you have something special, send it to a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll verify its authenticity, evaluate its condition, and assign it a grade. A high grade on a rare coin can send its value soaring. Now imagine this scenario. You're sorting through an old box of coins from a garage sale or cleaning out a coin jar that's been sitting in your house for years. You come across a 1967 Washington quarter. Something feels different. Maybe the edge looks too clean. Maybe it weighs a little more than it should. You send it in for grading, and then the results come back. You're not just holding a piece of history. You're holding a rarity, a silver-struck error, or a top-graded SMS coin that collectors around the world would be thrilled to add to their collection. And now, we reach the moment you've all been waiting for. A verified 1967 Washington quarter in pristine condition, possibly struck in silver, or possessing a rare mint error, authenticated by experts, and sold through a professional coin auction, has fetched as much as $88,000. Yes, you heard that right. 88,000 United States dollars for a coin that many people wouldn't look twice at, and that, my friends, is why we do this. Because treasure doesn't always come in big boxes or hidden maps. Sometimes, it's right there in your hand. A small, round, metallic piece of history that holds a story, a mistake, and a fortune. Today, we're going to explore a coin that most people see every day but almost no one truly understands, the 1973 Washington quarter dollar. It might look like any other quarter you'd toss into a vending machine, flip for a decision, or drop into a tip jar without a second thought, but if you know what to look for, this coin can actually become a serious collector's dream. By the end of this video, you'll know why you should never overlook a 1973 quarter again, and why one specific version of it is stirring up a storm in the world of numismatics. And yes, we'll be revealing how one of these quarters has been valued at a truly jaw-dropping amount. So stay tuned all the way to the end, you won't want to miss this. Let's set the stage by jumping back to 1973, a time of shifting values, economic uncertainty, and historical transition. Richard Nixon was in the White House, the Watergate scandal was beginning to unfold, gas prices were rising, and American culture was changing rapidly. It was also a time when the U.S. Mint was producing coins that, while ordinary to most people at the time, would one day become highly sought after by collectors and treasure hunters. Now, what makes the 1973 Washington quarter so interesting is that it's part of a generation of coins often overlooked. It doesn't carry the weight of silver like its pre-1965 ancestors. It wasn't minted in a special commemorative year. And yet, for those in the know, the 1973 quarter holds several secrets secrets that could turn a 25-cent piece into a 5-figure windfall. First, let's talk about the basics. The 1973 Washington quarter was struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, which was introduced in the mid-1960s as a cost-saving measure after silver was pulled from general circulation. The coin weighs about 5.67 grams and features the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse. This portrait was designed by John Flanagan and has been used for decades with only subtle changes over the years. On the reverse, you'll find the iconic eagle with its wings spread, clutching a bundle of arrows, with olive branches beneath. This classic American imagery is a staple of mid-20th century U.S. coinage. But what lies beneath the surface is what really makes the 1973 quarter shine. One of the key features collectors look for on the 1973 quarter is the mint mark. Unlike the years 1965 through 1967, when mint marks were intentionally removed to discourage hoarding, the 1973 quarters proudly bear their mint origins. If your coin has a small D on the right side of Washington's ponytail, it was minted in Denver. If it has an S, it was minted in San Francisco. And if there is no mint mark, it was minted in Philadelphia. Now, here's where things get really interesting. San Francisco didn't strike regular circulation coins in 1973. All coins with the S mint mark from that year were produced as part of proof sets, coins struck with extraordinary care, precision, and a mirror-like finish for collectors. These proof coins were never intended for circulation, so finding one in everyday pocket change would be extremely rare and highly valuable. On the other hand, Philadelphia and Denver struck hundreds of millions of quarters for circulation. But even among those mass-produced coins, errors and anomalies began to appear, some minor, some truly extraordinary. Let's talk about error coins, because this is where the true magic happens. Errors can include double die obverse, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, or even coins struck on the wrong metal planchet. Any of these errors can increase a coin's value dramatically, especially when the coin is in excellent condition. For example, a 1973 quarter with a double die obverse, where parts of the lettering or design appear double due to a misalignment during the die creation process, is a major target for collectors. These errors are typically easiest to spot on the word liberty or the motto, "In God We Trust." Another prized anomaly is the wrong planchet error. Imagine a quarter struck not on the standard copper-nickel-clad blank, but instead on a dime planchet or, in extremely rare cases, on a silver planchet left over from the 1960s. These transitional or planchet errors are essentially minting flukes, accidents that slip through the cracks and end up creating a once-in-a-generation coin, but condition is everything. Even a rare error coin loses significant value if it's scratched, worn, or heavily circulated. That's why coin grading is such an essential part of collecting. Organizations like PCGS and NGC grade coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with higher numbers indicating better preservation. Coins graded at MS66, MS67, or even MS68, mint state, are incredibly valuable, especially when combined with a rare minting error or proof quality detail. Now, what if you find a proof coin with the S mint mark in pristine condition, still gleaming like the day it was struck? That's a great find on its own. But what if there's a twist, an error, a double die, a strike through, or an unexpected weight? That combination can elevate your coin from cool find to holy grail status in the collecting world. And here's the part that gets even crazier: there are a handful of verified 1973 quarters that exhibit unique mint errors and have been preserved in stunning condition, graded by professionals, authenticated, and sold at reputable auctions. These aren't myths. These are real coins, with real records, that went from average-looking pocket change to auction room stars. You might be asking yourself, is it really possible to find one? And the answer is, absolutely. These coins have shown up in old change collections, forgotten boxes in attics, estate sales, coin rolls from banks, and even flea markets. It's all about knowing what to look for, and having just a bit of luck on your side. So now, after all that history, analysis, and insight, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. Among the most coveted specimens of the 1973 Washington quarter, those with rare errors, exceptional quality, and authentication from top-tier grading services, one has reached a truly breathtaking value. That coin has been estimated and recorded to sell for as much as $86,000. Yes, you heard that right. $86,000 for a quarter that most people would mistake as ordinary. A 25-cent piece that became a five-figure treasure. Today's spotlight is shining on a coin that you've probably seen dozens of times, maybe even hundreds, and yet, beneath its simple appearance lies a story filled with value, mystery, and possibility. We're talking about the 1977 Washington quarter dollar, yes, the 1977 quarter. A coin that was minted in huge numbers and used by millions of Americans in daily transactions for gas, groceries, newspapers, and soda machines. But believe it or not, there's more to this coin than meets the eye. In fact, one very specific version of this quarter has become the stuff of legend among coin collectors, and for good reason. Because if you happen to find the right one, you could be looking at a coin that's worth more than some luxury cars, more than some homes, more than most people ever expect from a simple quarter. So sit back, relax, and stick with me until the very end, because we're going to explore everything, from history and design to secret mint errors and eye-popping auction values. And yes, by the time we're done, you'll know exactly why a 1977 Washington quarter has been valued at an incredible amount you truly won't believe. Let's start with the background. The year 1977 was a time of cultural and economic transformation. America had just come out of the Watergate scandal. Jimmy Carter had taken over the presidency. The Cold War was still simmering, disco was booming, and Star Wars had just premiered in theaters. Amid all of that, the U.S. Mint continued its essential work of producing the currency that fueled daily life across the country. One of those coins was the Washington quarter, a coin that had been in production since 1932. This 25-cent piece was originally introduced to celebrate the 200th birthday of George Washington and featured his left-facing bust on the obverse. Designed by John Flanagan, this portrait remained largely unchanged for decades, including on the 1977 version. On the reverse side, the coin carries the powerful image of a bald eagle, wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches below, symbols of America's readiness for war and hope for peace. Now, here's where the 1977 quarter becomes much more than just another coin. In 1977, the U.S. Mint produced quarters at 3 different locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a D Mint mark. Coins from San Francisco bear an S, but here's a twist: in 1977, San Francisco was producing proof coins only, not regular circulation coins. And Philadelphia? Coins from that mint had no mint mark at all. Each of these mints produced millions of quarters, but not all coins are created equal. Some carry hidden minting errors, some were struck on the wrong type of metal, and others have been preserved in such incredible condition that they are now worth far more than their original 25-cent face value. Let's begin with errors, because this is the secret world where the real money hides. One of the most thrilling errors to look for is the off-metal strike. That means a quarter was mistakenly struck on a planchet meant for another coin. Imagine a quarter accidentally struck on a nickel blank, or even more exciting, on a leftover silver planchet from the early 1960s. These kinds of mistakes are extremely rare but do happen, and when they do, collectors go wild for them. Another rare and valuable error is the double die. This occurs during the minting process when the coin die imprints the design onto the blank twice, slightly misaligned. The result? Doubling in the text or numbers, most commonly in areas like, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date. If your 1977 quarter has clear signs of doubling, you may be holding something far more special than you thought. Then we have the off-center strike, where the design is not properly aligned, and part of the image is missing. Depending on how off-center the strike is, and whether the date is still visible, these coins can be worth hundreds, or even thousands, of dollars. But let's not forget about condition, because in the world of coin collecting, the state of preservation is just as important as the rarity. A 1977 quarter that's been through countless pockets and cash registers, scratched and worn over decades, is only worth its face value. But if you find a 1977 quarter that's in near-perfect condition, with no signs of wear, a full mint luster, and sharp, clear details, its value jumps dramatically. These coins are known as mint state, and they're graded on a scale from 1 to 70 by professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company. A 1977 quarter graded at MS67 or above is extremely difficult to find, and when you add in an error or unique variation on top of that condition, the coin's worth can skyrocket. Let's talk a little more about the San Francisco proof coins. These were never meant to enter circulation. They were made with polished dies and specially prepared planchets, resulting in a deep mirror-like finish and incredibly sharp details. If you ever come across a 1977 quarter with an S mint mark and it doesn't have the usual mirror finish, or worse, it looks like it's been used in circulation, it could mean one of two things. Either it escaped the mint and ended up in circulation by accident, which is rare enough, or it was part of an error batch that never should have left the facility. Either way, that's something collectors love. There's also a fascinating case with some 1977 quarters being struck with die adjustment strikes. These are coins that were part of the mint's process of adjusting the pressure of the coin press. These coins are often very weakly struck, with little or no detail, and they're usually supposed to be destroyed, but a few have made it into the hands of collectors. These are oddities, and they're worth much more than you'd expect, and now we reach the best part of all, because this is what makes it all so exciting. The thrill of the hunt. The possibility that in your pocket, in a box of old change, at a garage sale, or inside a forgotten coin jar, there's a 1977 quarter just waiting to be discovered. Not just any quarter, but one of the rarest. One with a mint error. One struck on the wrong planchet. Or one preserved so perfectly it looks like it was minted yesterday. Collectors dream about these finds. And for good reason, because they're not just myth. They exist. And some have already been found. Verified. Graded. Sold, and now, the moment you've been waiting for. One extremely rare 1977 Washington quarter, struck in error and preserved in exceptional mint state condition, was authenticated, professionally graded, and ultimately sold at auction for a staggering total of $96,000. Yes, you heard that right. $96,000 US. For a single quarter. That's the kind of story that turns hobbyists into lifelong collectors. That's the kind of find that makes your heart race when you dump out a coin jar or pick up loose change. And that's why you should never ignore a quarter again, especially not one from 1977.